Chapter 2006, Ensnared. Chapter 2006, Ensnared. Above Yi Futian, the celestial splendor of Ling Shao Pagoda swept down, and the void roared, oppressing the space where Yi Futian was. Phantoms of the divine pagoda slammed down continuously, covered Yi Futian within it. Those branches, leaves, and vines that were twirling toward Ling Shao Pagoda were pulverized immediately. As divine splendor spread out, Ling Shao Pagoda was getting closer, falling from above Yi Futian like a towering temple. Yi Futian morphed into a divine tree, its branches and leaves twirling madly. A supreme sword will was gathering at the same time. Infinite divine swords converged until a massive divine sword appeared in front of him. The infinite sword will was still integrating into the divine sword. Its sword light was radiant, bright, and flawless. Yi Futian pointed his finger toward the sky. Suddenly, the divine sword pierced upward, colliding with Ling Shao Pagoda. A sword river appeared between Yi Futian and the pagoda. There was an infinite sword will in this sword river that blended into the divine sword. A splendid sword screen was created where the collision occurred, radiating toward the surrounding areas. Ling He, who was walking in the void, cast a glance. With a turning of his mind, he took control of the divine wheel of the great path as Ling Shao Pagoda continued to spin, and the pagoda's divine brilliance sprinkled from above. A dull sound was heard, and even the void gave a violent tremble. Phantoms of the pagoda appeared all around them as they suppressed down at the same time. The vast world was now seemed to be in the realm of the divine pagoda. Yi Futian's body seemed to tremble as well. The divine sword shuddered, and the sword screen rippled but did not tear. The crowd found that Ling Shao Pagoda was vibrating and spinning on its own, causing a wondrous rhythm between heaven and earth, suppressing and shattering this side of the void. For those whose cultivation was not strong enough, this atmosphere alone could kill them immediately. The divine wheel would have shattered their organs. The branches and leaves of the divine tree surged with insane speed. Those extremely thick branches and leaves were like vines of 10,000 years, winding around the sword screen. The area it invaded was getting larger, covering all the space in the surrounding area. At the same time, they constantly swept toward the pagodas that were between heaven and earth. At this moment, Yi Futian was like the tree god of 100 centuries, who had nurtured lives into being. Whose great path is the stronger? More and more people noticed the battlefield of the two of them. Both of them were very strong and far surpassed those of the same realm. Yi Futian especially surprised many people. After all, Ling He, the young palace lord of Ling Shao Palace, had achieved his fame for a long time. Although he had battled brilliantly, no one had actually witnessed his fight with Yan Dongyang. Therefore, most of the observers were there to see for themselves. Now, it seemed that he had not earned his name in vain, and he was powerful. However, if Yi Futian's divine tree and divine wheel of swordsmanship were used to resist the suppression of Ling Shao Pagoda, how was he going to deal with the attack from Ling He himself? Perhaps Yi Futian would still be at a disadvantage, and he would still be in danger. The fighting spirit on Ling He, who walked steadily toward Yi Futian, became stronger as he got closer, and an astonishing turbulence of the great path had formed around him. He stared at Yi Futian with those golden eyes, and at this moment, there was an iciness in the depth of his eyes. Yi Futian was an expert at swords. If the sword was used to block the pagoda, how would he deal with the spear? The golden divine spear held in Ling He's hand let out a horrific spear aura. As he approached Yi Futian, his arm cocked back. Suddenly his body was the center, from which numerous spear shadows appeared everywhere. An astonishing spear will erupted before the spear was released, turning into a golden beam and shooting straight at Yi Futian. Clearly, Ling He understood that it was impossible to hurt Yi Futian with spear will alone, but it would not be so easy to block his shot either. "Brother Yi, be careful." Ling He stopped at this point. Though he had stopped, his momentum had climbed to the limit as golden divine brilliance diffused from him. At this moment he, who was wearing the golden armor, was like a god of war. "That's Ling Shao Palace's Lingxi spear. Watch out." A voice reminded Yi Futian. The voice belonged to thunder-punishing Skylord. Yi Futian was in a somewhat unfavorable situation, and Lingxi spear techniques was well known throughout the Donghua domain. The palace lord of Lingxiao Palace, with Lingxiao Pagoda and Lingxi spear at his disposal, had few rivals within the Donghua domain. He had tremendous strength, and if Yi Futian was careless, a strike could be the end of him. "Thank you for reminding me, elder." Yi Futian's response baffled thunder-punishing Skylord. He looked at Yi Futian, who was trapped in the distance. Yet, he still had the time to respond to him. It seemed that he still had strength and mind to spare? Maybe everyone had underestimated him? They could only wait and see. Everyone stared at Ling He. The Lingxi spear was swift and invincible, and battles usually ended in an instant. The Ling Xiao Pagoda would suppress while the Lingxi spear techniques finished the job. The dual powers complemented each other, making them victorious wherever they went. This time, dealing with this well-known heir of Eastern Deity Island, there shouldn't be any doubts. At this moment, countless phantoms appeared between heaven and earth, as well as infinite shadows of spears. Ling He made his move. The crowd only saw a spear aurora, as a golden spear shadow appeared between Ling He and Yi Futian. There was only an afterimage left where he was. A single strike from Lingxi spear was enough to conquer gods and demons. Bang! A loud noise came out as the Lingxi spear encountered something tough. The terrifying golden divine glory bloomed in front of Yi Futian, who, at this moment, was wrapped by a boundless gigantic divine elephant. Violent elephant trumpeting sounded, and two hands reached out to hold the spear coming for him. Divine wheel! Everyone was slightly surprised when they saw the sight in front of them. Another one of Yi Futian's divine wheel of the Great Path, a towering, majestic divine elephant. Ling He glanced at Yi Futian indifferently as shrill sounds could be heard. Overwhelming golden divine glory erupted from him as the spear continued to move forward, piercing into the body of the divine elephant. The sound was particularly harsh, as it was aimed to break open Yi Futian's divine wheel of Great Path. However, at the same time, Ling He saw a pair of extremely horrifying eyes. An extreme chill rushed into his pupils, wanting to freeze his spiritual soul. At the same time, his body also felt the chill, so very cold, seeping deep into his bones. Everyone discovered to their shock that the domain of the divine tree had already enveloped this entire part of the world. An extreme frosty current enveloped and circulated this domain. An extreme coldness threatened to freeze everything, turning the temperature into absolute zero. Ling He felt that his spear, his body, and even blood were about to be frozen. Everything seemed to become slower, even his heartbeat. How could it be? What kind of ability was this? Had Yi Futian been waiting for him here all this time? Using the divine sword to block Ling Xiao Pagoda with everything he's got just to wait for him to get close? At this moment, Yi Futian's eyes were icy. There was a hint of icy murderous intent within. He stared at Ling He and let out a roar, accompanied by the Buddha sound of the Great Path. This space was covered by a sound wave of Buddhism, the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm, in such a short distance, attacking his spiritual soul. Ling He felt his spiritual soul trembled as he was enduring the invasion of the power of Yin and the attack of the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm. His spiritual soul was about to collapse and shatter. He felt that unconsciousness was imminent. These layers of attacks were set up like traps, waiting for him to break in and ensnare himself. Everyone outside was bewildered by this sudden sight as well. The continuous burst of multiple abilities in a short time caught everyone by surprise. Everyone had thought that it would be Ling He suppressing Yi Futian, but they did not expect that the situation would be turned on its head in a split second. After an astonishing reversal, it seemed that Yi Futian had been lying in wait for Ling He. His ability is so strong, so many great paths. Some were amazed and quite shaken inside. It was rumored that Yi Futian had defeated Yan Dongyang with the sword. The world thought that Yi Futian was an expert at swordsmanship, but they never expected that he was good at so many other abilities. Yi Futian stared at Ling He and did not bother to disguise the murderous intent in his eyes. At this moment, Yi Futian raised his palm and slammed forward. The sounds of elephants rocked the sky. As the gigantic palm slapped down, Ling He sensed a strong sense of danger. Massive golden glory burst from his body, and countless phantoms appeared around him. An astonishing brilliance burst from the long spear in his hands. It was as if countless phantoms struck at the same time, continuing to fight. With a violent crashing sound, Ling He moved. The overwhelming intent of battle helped him break free of the chill. It seemed that endless phantoms of spears erupted from him just as the Ling Shao Pagoda also released its strongest pressure of might. When the phantoms of the spears passed through, he moved, wanting to retreat from this space. But the chill affected his speed. Countless branches and leaves twirled toward him as the great path sealed off the space. Futian pointed his finger forward, and the sword will of the great path unleashed to annihilate the space. Open! Ling He let out a great shout. The Lingxi spear was fast as lightning, breaking through this domain of the great path as it rushed out. In the next moment, his body flew backward, covered in blood. There seemed to be several sword marks on his body as blood came out from the corners of his mouth. Buzz! Futian came for him in attack. Ling He saw him moving like lightning as a terrifying light appeared in the sky. The Lingxi spear was as fast as lightning, colliding with the sword that Futian had unleashed. Once again his body was knocked back. As he stretched out his hand, the spear flew back into his hand. Enough! Futian still wanted to move forward, but suddenly, a few people appeared in front of him. As their voice fell, they raised their hands and attacked. A horrific phantom of the pagoda appeared, suppressing a corner of the sky. With a loud bang, Futian's body was knocked backward. Those who struck him were two upper Renhuang cultivators. Futian stopped himself and didn't continue forward. Although Ling He was a despicable person, his strength was undeniably strong. Furthermore, there were people from Ling Shao Palace in attendance to kill Ling He. But it was wishful thinking. However, the anger in his heart was still burning, unable to be extinguished. You guys are awesome. Futian glanced at the cultivators from Ling Shao Palace as he spoke with a touch of cold sarcasm. The people from Ling Shao Palace felt terribly embarrassed, and Ling He was even gloomier. In this battle, he was unexpectedly defeated. For all the fancy moves, that astonishing blow, everything was so perfect. Without a doubt, he had thought that it would be a one-sided fight, but the ending seemed quite the contrary. That white-haired Renhuang counterstruck with absolutely dominant power, catching him by surprise. Ling was defeated by a cultivator whose realm was lower than him. This was a huge blow to him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2007, Memory Loss. Chapter 2007, Memory Loss. Didn't Ling He of Ling Shao Palace want to ask for advice? What's the meaning of your involvement? At this time, some cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower asked those who stepped in to stop Futian. Enough is enough, responded the cultivators from Ling Shao Palace. Does Ling He concede then? Cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower asked again. The cultivators from Ling Shao Palace frowned and cast a look at the Renhuang who spoke. If Ling He can still fight, why did you interfere? The cultivator from Wangshan Watchtower sneered. You were the ones who started the war and you were the ones who forced its end. Does Ling Shao Palace really want to ask Wangshan Watchtower for advice, or are you just taking the opportunity to kick us? If it's the latter, you can just get on with it without pretense. Furthermore, the heir of Ling Shao Palace, while his realm is higher than that of Yi Lionian, required interference from the people of Ling Shao Palace. Aren't you guys ashamed? The cultivator from Wangshan Watchtower unleashed his sarcasm without reservation. If I am a cultivator from Ling Shao Palace, I would have no face to continue staying here. Ling He's eyes were extremely cold. Defeat in itself was something extremely shameful, and now he had been ridiculed so openly and without mercy. When his realm was higher than Futian, he still needed the others from Ling Shao Palace to intervene and help him avoid Futian's continued attack. This battle was indeed disgraceful. Elders need to say no more. There are many such as this, and we are used to it. Futian turned to the cultivator who had spoken, and the other nodded in acknowledgement but continued, bravado is easily exposed in the end. If one is a sore loser, one should not challenge and start things. That arrogant and condescending attitude was a bit ironic when you think about it now. Every sound was like a thorn that burnt Ling He's cheeks. It appeared that the others would not easily let him off the hook. Ling Shao Palace was good at exploiting those who were weaker. The insults from the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower were intentional, deliberately making fun of him to reveal his hypocrisy and aimed to shame him. It seems that today we would have a chance to see for ourselves if all the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower were this outstanding. An old man spoke as the aura of the great path released from the cultivators of Ling Shao Palace, suppressing this corner of the sky with extreme terror. At this moment, the Millet Emperor's eyes swept over the crowd, and the power of the great path permeated from him. Everyone from Ling Shao Palace felt an overpowering force that made them difficult to move. They looked at Millet Emperor, and the Palace Lord of Ling Shao Palace took a step forward toward him and said, "What does the Emperor mean by this?" Ling Shao Palace wanted to exchange with Wangshan Watchtower, and we welcomed the opportunity. However, now, whether it was an exchange or something else, I am sure it is clear to everyone who's here. If you want to overpower anyone with numbers, I will have no choice but to handle this personally, said the Millet Emperor. The Palace Lord of Ling Shao Palace looked at Millet Emperor. If Renhuang on both sides were to interact at the same time, it would put the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower in great danger, so the Millet Emperor had no choice but to intervene. The Palace Lord of Ling Shao Palace smiled as a violent and wild aura released from his body, and the same pressure of the great path snaked out. Both of them were supreme existence beyond their ranks, with great power. When the pressure from both of them bloomed, the sky seemed heavier, as if everything was about to stand still. The battle between the Renhuang below gradually subsided, as many cultivators stepped back to look up at the two men who faced each other in the void. The Palace Lord of Ling Shao Palace and the Millet Emperor, two powerful men in their own rights, both of them were filled with the invisible currents of the Great Path, which contained extremely terrible pressure. They did not take action yet, but the cultivators around them already felt the invisible collision. Would they actually collide? The people of those top forces from different regions in the distance were all looking at this side. On this day, Emperor Shi was to cross the divine tribulation, and cultivators from all sides were here. Could they actually see other major figures exchange with one another? Above the sky, there was a dull sound as a suffocating aura appeared in this corner of the sky. Those Renhuang retreated far from this area. Some of them felt their breaths quickened, their internal organs were churning. "Back up," Li Changxing said. Immediately, the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower retreated, and the cultivators from the ancient royal family of Yan as well as those from Ling Shao Palace did the same. Only Emperor Yan was still standing there, his majestic golden robe moved with the wind, standing with his hands behind his back, watching the two in silence. At this moment, people in the distance felt that the sky was about to collapse, and there seemed to be infinite elusive shadows between heaven and earth. They raised their heads and stared at the sky. In the vast world, there were many illusory phantoms of the towers, and countless divine monuments flowed down from the sky, suppressing this space. Both of them were experts at the Great Path suppressions. Moreover, their realms had far transcended the ordinary. It was as if they were in control of the power from the source of heaven and earth itself. When they released the coercion of might, those Renhuang retreated, as if they were not fit to be in the same battlefield. Boom! There was a violent bursting sound. Both men made no move, but there was a terrible sonic boom that resounded between the two. The dull rumbling sounds made everyone's heart beat wildly as astonishing currents continued to collide between them, causing a terrifying storm in that space. At this moment, the crowd saw the phantom figure of the two of them that seemed to have moved, and yet they were still where they were. Everyone saw two vague figures touched briefly in the middle, then separated. In the next moment, a shocking storm swept out again. Watch out! Many Renhuang were knocked out by the sweep of that storm, and Yi Futian was the same. The power of the Great Path surged upon his body, but he was still repelled by the storm. He steadied his body in the savage storm. His steps were incredibly heavy. He moved his arms that were covering his eyes and looked forward. In the center of the storm, the two men were still right where they were, as if they had never moved. The terrifying storm did not seem to be caused by them. Emperor Yen was also standing there, his robe flapped wildly in the wind as he quietly looked upon the two men in front of him. He could see clearly that the two had made an exchange in that instant just now. At their level of cultivation, there were not many opportunities to fight against each other. After all, there were very few of them that were at the same level, and they all had various concerns that the impact would be too great to bear. Therefore, the Palace Lord of Ling Shao Palace and the Millet Emperor just collided for a brief instant, which was more than enough. You were here today to observe the ceremony. What exactly are you two doing? At this moment, a voice came from a distance. In the distant void, the chief of Donghua Domain Chief's manor stood there and asked. I couldn't help myself wanting to experience Millet Emperor's gate to world suppression. I ask your forgiveness, Chief, said the Palace Lord of Ling Shao Palace. Millet Emperor said nothing, merely looking at the other quietly. This is Turtle Deity Island, and everyone here is our guest. Let's not disturb Emperor Shi. If everyone still desire a time to interact, find another time. If you're free next year, everyone is invited for a visit at Donghua Heavens. The chief continued, cease the competing today. Emperor Yen too will let it go. Emperor Yen nodded slightly and said, since the chief has spoken, let's stop there. However, regarding Eastern Deity Island, it was because the chief had mediated in the past that I didn't touch Eastern Deity Island all these years when Millet Emperor made his promises. But now, something seemed to have changed. Millet Emperor will have to answer for it in the future. This was just an excuse. If it weren't for Yi Futian's extraordinary display of talent, no one from the ancient royal family of Yen would bother to look at Yi Futian at all, much less remembering anything about Eastern Deity Island. Millet Emperor looked at them, still silent. The chief continued, well, let us be gone now, and not disturb Emperor Shi's cultivation. Very good. The Palace Lord of Ling Shao Palace nodded, then turned around to command, time to go. After that, the group left. Ling He glanced at Yi Futian as he left, with murderous intent in his eyes. Yi Futian detected the other's gaze, but his eyes were equally cold. This debt of Lin Yuan's was impossible to collect at the moment. However, he would remember Ling He. Millet Emperor, we will meet again, said Emperor Yen as he left with his people also. Seeing that there was no more excitement to be had, the cultivators from all sides left one after another. We should go too, said Millet Emperor, and immediately levitated into the air and was gone. After everyone left, above the Turtle Peak, Emperor Shi and thunder-punishing Skylord looked at those who had scattered in the distance. Emperor Shi sighed in a low voice. The Divine Prefecture, after being peaceful for so many years, will face imminent disturbance again. With Donghuang the Great ruling the world, the Divine Prefecture won't be in chaos, said thunder-punishing Skylord. What if someone from outside of Divine Prefecture were here? Emperor Shi said. Thunder-punishing Skylord was silent for a moment, and said, having traveled outside these years, I have heard a few things. There were some events that had occurred in the original realm, and some principalities have come to pass, but it had not affected Divine Prefecture for the time being. The original realm. Emperor Shi stretched out his hand, as if wanting to catch something, but didn't. After Yi Futian and the others had departed, in the void, the Millet Emperor stood next to Yi Futian and heard Yi Futian asked him, is there also a grudge between Ling Shao Palace and Wangshan Watchtower? Millet Emperor shook his head. We didn't have too much contact. There is no grudge to speak of. Yi Futian looked pensive. Then, was it because of the incident on the cliff that incensed Ling Shao Palace against Wangshan Watchtower? But it seemed a bit too extreme. Have you inherited Donglai's memory? Millet Emperor asked suddenly. Yi Futian nodded, but not all of it, and they were quite disorganized. Do you any memory of his last battle? Millet Emperor asked. Yi Futian shook his head, looked up at Millet Emperor, and seemed to sense something. How come he was missing such memory? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. In the Wangshan Watchtower, the cultivation training grounds of Millet Emperor, a group of silhouettes descended. It was Millet Emperor's group returning. In the Wangshan Watchtower, the cultivation training grounds of Millet Emperor, a group of silhouettes descended. It was Millet Emperor's group returning. With Millet Emperor's towering cultivation, even traversing over many continents would not need much time. As their group landed, Millet Emperor revealed a pensive look. He seemed to be thinking about something. "Teacher," Li Changsheng asked softly, "is there anything that you need me to do?" Millet Emperor shook his head as he looked into the distance. Back then, during the battle when Supreme Deity Donglai perished, what had happened exactly? Even the memories that Yi Futian inherited did not reveal anything about it. Had Supreme Deity Donglai intentionally erased them? If so, had Supreme Deity Donglai intentionally kept it hidden, and did he not want them to know about it? "All of you leave us. Both of you remain," Millet Emperor instructed. He meant for Goddess Donglai and Yi Futian to remain. The other people bowed slightly and then stepped down one by one. Zhong Chan had a strange look on his face. He could tell that Millet Emperor had matters to discuss. Yet even he could not know about this matter? "Uncle Millet," Goddess Donglai called out as she looked at Millet Emperor. "Is there something urgent?" "It is nothing," Millet Emperor said, not revealing his thoughts. He instead looked at Yi Futian and asked, "In the previous battle, I saw that you had a murderous intent towards Ling He. What happened between the two of you?" The two of them had fought fiercely against each other. Observers of their battle could tell that they weren't pulling their punches. Their attacks were ferocious, and Yi Futian had calculated his moves against Ling He. He pretended that his sword had been suppressed by Ling Shao Pagoda, drawing Ling He to attack him close up. Yi Futian had wanted to kill him in a single blow. Millet Emperor had heard of the grudge between the two of them at the cliff face. If Ling He bore hatred against Yi Futian would not have needed to respond in such a fashion. Attacking the young palace lord of Ling Shao Palace so fiercely in such a situation was not worth the risk for such a talented person like Yi Futian. Unless there were intricacies that Millet Emperor was not aware of. When Yi Futian heard Millet Emperor's question, a cold look flashed past in his eyes. He replied, "Before this, when we were traveling across the Divine Ocean continent, we encountered two juniors. We got acquainted with them before the cliff face where thunder-punishing Sky Lord left his teachings. They wanted to enter Turtle Deity Island to witness Emperor Shi facing his tribulation. I agreed to help them and brought them to Turtle Deity Island. However, thunder-punishing Sky Lord told me across transmitted thoughts that, not long after we separated upon arriving on Turtle Deity Island, these two juniors were killed by people sent by Ling He." When Millet Emperor heard Yi Futian's explanation, he revealed a strange look and said, "The young palace lord of Ling Shao Palace cannot even tolerate two juniors." For him to have committed such an atrocity was somewhat demeaning to his station. It is not that he could not tolerate them. He originally gave no regard for the lives of these two juniors. He did not care at all, Yi Futian stated. A person with such character deserves death. Millet Emperor nodded his head and said, "For you to say such things, he will sooner or later want to kill you." "I understand," answered Yi Futian as he nodded his head. That was why he also wanted to eliminate the other party. However, in the Donghua domain, it was difficult to do so owing to the other party's identity. Millet Emperor gave Yi Futian a serious look. For him to be angered by the deaths of two insignificant people to the point that he wanted to kill the young palace lord of Ling Shao Palace, the way this fellow did things was extraordinary. He wore his heart on his sleeve. "You have cultivated the power of the divine elephant and are proficient in suppressing the great path, right?" Millet Emperor asked. Answered Yi Futian while nodding his head. "You have comprehended your cultivation in the Wangshan Watchtower before. What are your thoughts?" Millet Emperor continued asking. "It is as though the Wangshan Watchtower itself is formed from the great path. The aura inside feels as though it is the great path itself. The domain inside has absolute power of suppression," Yi Futian said. Millet Emperor nodded his head and said, "It looks like your comprehension is deep. By comprehending my cultivation in the Wangshan Watchtower, I created a magnum opus called Gate to World Suppression. However, that was because it was compatible with my abilities and combined all the techniques that I comprehended. You are proficient in even more techniques, hence you can develop it more broadly. I will teach you Gate to World Suppression." You can then merge it with your own comprehension and further cultivate it. Goddess Donglai revealed an astonished look as she stood there. She had brought Yi Futian over due to his connection with her father. She wanted to find Yi Futian some backing. She was worried about anything happening to him in the future. She was taking precautions just in case. She never imagined that Millet Emperor would pass on his magnum opus to Yi Futian. Gate to World Suppression was a magnum opus that Millet Emperor comprehended himself. Millet Emperor became renowned in the Divine Prefecture due to this technique. He had a few extremely glorious battles before. Even in the Wangshan Watchtower, few people cultivated this technique. Zhong Chan was probably the only other person who truly mastered it. He was a prominent figure who had cultivating abilities very close to that of Millet Emperor. Zhong Chan was probably personally chosen by Millet Emperor to inherit his teachings. However, now Millet Emperor actually wanted to teach Yi Futian Gate to World Suppression. They had only gone on a trip to the Divine Ocean continent together, and Millet Emperor already thought so highly of Yi Futian. However, during this trip, Yi Futian had indeed displayed extreme levels of talent. When he was comprehending the teachings on the cliff face, thunder-punishing Skylord had also acknowledged him and had transmitted his thoughts over to him. At that time, aside from Ling He, there was another famous figure present, Qin Qing of Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. She was one of 3 main disciples who were personally trained by Sword Goddess. However, only Yi Futian managed to comprehend the true meaning of the teachings on the cliff face. Yi Futian had also managed to defeat Ling He, who similarly had a flawless great path and who had higher cultivation than him. With such ability, even Great Yan ancient royal family thought highly of him. "Senior, this seems inappropriate," Yi Futian said. After all, he was not a disciple of Millet Emperor. Only Millet Emperor's personal disciples were qualified to cultivate his magnum opus. There's nothing wrong with it. Cultivators do not like to be bound by rules anyway. Since I am the one teaching the way, naturally I will teach it to whoever that I want to teach, Millet Emperor assured Yi Futian. Zhong Chan has mastered Gate to World Suppression. I'm sure the skill will be fully utilized in your hands too. Besides that, I can tell that some skills that you cultivate might not be any weaker than Gate to World Suppression. You did not unleash your full potential when you were fighting with Ling He, right? Asked Millet Emperor. With his vision, he could tell quite a lot of things from the battle. Millet Emperor believed that aside from him, other top figures had also comprehended many things from the battle between Ling He and Yi Futian. Ling He didn't just lose to Yi Futian. In reality, the combat ability between the two of them might not even be on the same level. Ling He paled in insignificance when compared to Yi Futian. Yi Futian nodded, admitting it openly. Goddess Donglai, who was beside him, cast a glance at him. She had chosen Yi Futian because he was acknowledged by the divine tree and had received her father's teachings. However, this top monstrous figure from the original realm was indeed stronger than what she expected. She was curious to find out what Yi Futian's future held. I will impart my knowledge of Gate to World Suppression to you. Receive it without any worries. You can merge it with your other abilities based on your own cultivation, Millet Emperor said. A formless aura permeated from Millet Emperor's body and enveloped Yi Futian. Divine halos directly surged into Yi Futian's mind. They transformed into drawings and were engraved in his mind. After a moment, Yi Futian opened his eyes and bowed slightly at Millet Emperor, saying, "Thank you, teacher." Millet Emperor had imparted his magnum opus to Yi Futian, so he was worthy to be called teacher by Yi Futian. Yi Futian calling Millet Emperor teacher did not mean that he would become his disciple. Millet Emperor nodded with a smile when he heard Yi Futian greeting him as teacher. He replied, "Do not call me teacher when others are around. In the past, I have made a promise, so our relationship now is not that of an actual master and disciple." "I understand," Yi Futian answered as he nodded. "Go and practice," Millet Emperor commanded. Yi Futian turned around and strode towards the skyscraping watchtower. The watchtower was certainly the best place for him to comprehend and cultivate Gate to World Suppression. After Yi Futian left, Millet Emperor looked at Goddess Donglai. Prior to this, Millet Emperor had not said anything suspicious. However, Goddess Donglai could tell that he was hiding something. "Uncle Millet, If you have any thoughts, please do not hide them from me, Goddess Donglai said. Regarding your father's death, I have long suspected that Great Yen ancient royal family was not the only party involved. Millet Emperor explained to Goddess Donglai. Back then, the conflict between Eastern Deity Island and Great Yen ancient royal family was known by all. However, nobody witnessed the final battle. I suspect that other forces might have secretly been involved. Goddess Donglai had a serious expression as she asked Millet Emperor, who else does Uncle Millet think was involved in it? Millet Emperor analyzed, during our trip to Turtle Deity Island this time, what Ling Shao Palace did was abnormal. They had no grudges with us, so there was no need for them to kick us when we were down. As for the incident at the cliff face, it only involved Ling He and Yi Futian. It was unnecessary for Ling Shao Palace to magnify the issue. Unless they were targeting us for another reason. Ling Shao Palace was involved in my father's death? Goddess Donglai felt a heavy burden in her heart. She had not dreamt of avenging her father. However, she still felt miserable when she knew that other forces might be involved in the battle which caused her father's death. She reproached herself for not being strong enough to do something about the matter. I can only say that there is such a possibility. But the truth will eventually be revealed, Millet Emperor murmured. Uncle Millet, Goddess Donglai lowered her head. What's wrong? Millet Emperor asked. If there are other forces involved, looking into it further will. Goddess Donglai didn't finish her sentence, but Millet Emperor understood her words. What would happen if they found out the truth? Knowing the truth would not bring any benefits to Millet Emperor. Great Yen ancient royal family was already very domineering, with rich teachings and resources. The overall ability of the Wangshan Watchtower was weaker when compared to that of Great Yen ancient royal family. If yet another superpower was involved in this case, knowing the truth would definitely bring harm to Millet Emperor. He might as well pretend that he knew nothing and cease his investigation before anything bad happened. I want to know the truth, Millet Emperor declared while raising his head. The scene where he used to sit with Supreme Deity Donglai and discuss the way surfaced in his mind. His old friend had died in vain. Not only could he not avenge his friend, but he also didn't know who his enemy was. This matter had always been a burden in his heart. When cultivators reached Millet Emperor's current cultivation level, it was hard for them to advance further. It was even harder for them to improve themselves if their minds were encumbered with something. Hence, Millet Emperor was determined to find out the truth. Otherwise, he could not live with himself. Goddess Donglai sighed. In reality, she had lost hope in avenging her father. His appearance might be an opportunity. If you have a chance, make a trip to the Donghua heavens, Millet Emperor whispered while looking into the distance. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. On the other hand, younger brother Yi merges master's skill into his own technique. Considering this, he is indeed stronger than me. Li Changsheng comforted him by saying, "Don't put it like that. You walk the path that master has treaded on before exactly because you are the chosen one. You are born with a talent that is similar to master's. Therefore, you have had a smooth training journey following master's footsteps. Because of that, you were also able to maintain a flawless divine wheel when you broke through to the upper-level Renhuang Pain. If you continue to cultivate and refine your skills, you might be able to surpass master." What Changsheng says is not wrong. Everyone has different fateful encounters. It is impossible for any two people to walk the exact cultivation journey. Zongchan, you will surely surpass me in the future. Do not doubt yourself. If younger brother Yi can do the same as you, then it is convenient for both of you to compare yourself against each other. With comparison will you gain motivation. Since you have reached this stage in your cultivation, you must also have a sense of respect and not be proud. Similarly, you must also have strong beliefs to reach the peak, Millet Emperor advised as he looked at Li Changsheng and Zongchan. He had appeared high above them. "Master," both of them greeted as they bowed when they saw Millet Emperor appear. "We will remember your advice." Their master meant to say that once they had reached their current stage, they were already at the top level of cultivation, standing above all of creation. There did not seem to be much room for improvement for them, yet they still had a long way to go. They could not be blindly arrogant, but also needed intense self-confidence. It appeared to be paradoxical, yet it was complementary. If cultivation was like climbing a mountain, they were at the top of the mountain. The only place left to go was the peak. "What news do all of you bring with you?" Millet Emperor asked. Replied Li Changxing as he nodded his head. "Today, it is the year 10,051 of the Divine Prefecture calendar. Another 50 years have passed. News has come from the Donghua heavens. They have invited the cultivators from the various continents of the Donghua domain to gather." Millet Emperor nodded his head and said, "On Turtle Deity Island, Chief has already reminded us of this event. It is no surprise that he will send messengers over soon." Li Changxing and Zhong Chan nodded their heads in agreement. They believed Millet Emperor's deduction. As expected, just as Millet Emperor finished saying this, an intense wave of power of the great path of space came from the sky above. A brilliant divine spatial light descended from the sky. A group of people then appeared high above the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower. "They had arrived," Li Changxing muttered as he looked over in their direction. The group of figures approached the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower and looked over here from a distance. One of their members said in a loud voice, "By order of the chief, we have come to invite Senior Millet Emperor as well as the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower to the Donghua heavens for a gathering. Please inform Chief that I will be bringing the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower to the Donghua heavens," Millet Emperor replied as he gazed into the distance. "Many thanks, Millet Emperor," replied the people who had come. "We will return with your response. Farewell." As they said this, golden lightning radiated from their bodies. Their figures immediately disappeared from their positions. It was as though they had never been here in the first place. At that moment, the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower were all looking over in that direction with their heads raised. They naturally understood that the chief the messengers referred to was the Donghua domain's domain chief. Aside from him, who else dared to refer to themselves as chief before Millet Emperor? The cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower were somewhat surprised. However, for Millet Emperor and the others, this was within their expectations. Hence, they appeared very calm. Domain Chief's manner invited the cultivators of the Donghua domain. They would personally send messengers to superpowers to invite them over. This was to show them due respect. As for the other cultivators of the Donghua domain as well as the cultivators from other continents, it was up to them. Domain Chief's manner would not personally invite them. This was more of a logistical constraint. However, one could imagine that, after the grand occasion on Turtle Deity Island last year, the Donghua heavens would organize an event that surpassed that of Turtle Deity Island in terms of scale. Domain Chief's manor had waited 50 years before gathering the top forces of various continents as well as the cultivators of the Donghua domain again. Right at this moment, Yi Futian's aura fluctuation could be sensed from the watchtower. The Great Path domain dissipated as the galaxy disappeared. Yi Futian came out from the watchtower. Millet Emperor and the rest detected Yi Futian's movement and shifted their gazes towards him. His silver hair was dancing in the wind while his gaze was as profound as the galaxy. His temperament was otherworldly. If it wasn't because Millet Emperor knew that Yi Futian was from the original realm, he would most likely assume that Yi Futian was from one of the super powerful families. "Teacher," Yi Futian greeted Millet Emperor. He stopped not far away from the group and bowed slightly at Millet Emperor. Then he looked at Li Changxing and Zhong Chan and greeted, "Elder brothers. Did you succeed in your cultivation?" Li Changxing asked with a smile. Yi Futian answered, "Gate to world suppression is marvelous. With my current level of cultivation, I still can't comprehend all of it. I can only incorporate what I have managed to comprehend into my skill. I still have a long way to go." "Younger brother always speaks so humbly," Li Changxing said jokingly. Yi Futian smiled as he shrugged his shoulders. "Just now I overheard that the domain chief is gathering all the cultivators in the Donghua domain?" asked Yi Futian. Millet Emperor nodded in affirmation. "Previously, when we were at Turtle Deity Island, we didn't manage to forge connections with the cultivators from Domain Chief's manor. This is a good opportunity if you want to enter Domain Chief's manor. With your ability, there shouldn't be any problems." Yi Futian nodded, inquiring, Will teacher and elder brothers attend the gathering this time? Chief has personally invited us. Moreover, this is an event that occurs once every 50 years. Everyone in the Donghua domain will show him face. The cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower are no exception, Millet Emperor replied. After all, Domain Chief's manor was the ruling force of the Donghua domain in name. The domain chief was appointed by Donghuang the Great. Since Chief had personally sent a representative to invite them to the gathering, all the cultivators who trained in the Donghua domain would give Chief face and attend the event. Understood. Yi Futian nodded slightly. Domain Chief's manor was the core area of the Donghua domain. It was located in the Donghua heavens. After he entered Domain Chief's manor, it meant that he would have the chance to come in contact with the top forces in the Divine Prefecture. Once he was on the radar of the top forces of the Divine Prefecture, he might encounter some old friends again. Even though the Divine Prefecture was huge, it only had 18 domains. Every Domain Chief's manor in each domain was a core area in the Divine Prefecture. Domain Chief's manor in the Donghua domain was no exception to that. What would Yi Futian do if he encountered his old friends? It seemed like Millet Emperor's suggestion was right on point. Yi Futian indeed needed to enter Domain Chief's manor to cultivate. Once he became a member of Domain Chief's manor, his former enemies would not dare to attack him lightly even if they met in the future. Once he entered Domain Chief's manor, it was equivalent to him entering the core forces of the Divine Prefecture. He was also one step closer to Donghuang the Great. He should also be closer to revealing the truth about his origins and the secret of his godfather. By the time he broke through to the upper-level Renhuang plane, he should be able to slowly unveil these skeletons in the closet, right? He also had no idea what was going on in the original realm now. Did Jiyu manage to find herself again? Did Yu Sheng go to cultivate in the Devil World? Back when Yi Futian was still in the original realm, Devil General Mei Ting had also remained there. Mei Ting certainly had a deep connection with Yu Sheng. Would he bring Yu Sheng along when he left? Yi Futian had no answers to any of these questions. Right now, the main thing that he needed to focus on was to break through to the upper-level Renhuang plane as soon as possible. Since he came to the Divine Prefecture, his level of cultivation had been improving at the speed of lightning. However, once he reached his current level of cultivation, it was extremely difficult to break through to the next plane. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. He laughed loudly. Everyone welcome. The group that arrived were Yi Futian, Zhong Chan, and the others. They had come to Donghua Heavens earlier than expected. However, this time they did not travel by road but took advantage of the grand matrix of space. Donghua Heavens was the main continent, and at Donghua Domain Chief's manor, there was a supreme grand matrix of space that led to other main continents, which was much more convenient. In addition, all the top forces would try their best to create a great path of space so they could come here at any time. Wangshan Watchtower was no exception. There was a portal in Donghua Heavens, and it was located at the Lung family. They had established a super powerful matrix here, which could descend directly to Donghua Heavens from Wangshan Watchtower. The clan lord of the Lung family was an elder. A middle-aged man stood beside him with a smile. This man was the next in line of the Lung family, Sky Sword Lung Quangxing, an extremely well-known character. He had cultivated at Wangshan Watchtower and associated with the Millet Emperor. Because of this relationship, Wangshan Watchtower's teleportation matrix to Donghua Heavens was built inside the Lung family compound. Above the grand matrix, Yi Futian and his party stood there with Li Changxing in front, who looked at the old clan lord and smiled. Clan Lord Lung is much too kind. We came without notice. Please pardon our disturbance. You are too humble. Clan Lord Lung said with a smile. You are all Quangxing's brothers. There's no disturbance to speak of. I was just thinking that after the news, the Domain Chief's manor should personally dispatch a messenger to inform Wangshan Watchtower and that you may be here. I was prepared to see you all and was very much looking forward to it. Good to see senior brother Li again. Sky Sword Lung Quangxing stood there with a smile. He had thick eyebrows and deep-set eyes with a square jaw. He looked mighty and authoritative, and he inspired respect from those who laid eyes on him. Just him standing there was enough to give people a sense of awe. The name Sky Sword was by no means a vain moniker. "Junior brother Leng," Li Changsheng said with a smile, "long time no see. You are almost catching up to my realm. No wonder I have not seen you cultivating at Wangshan Watchtower all these years." "How can you say that, brother? I have been traveling across the continents of Divine Prefecture all these years to cultivate and comprehend. It hasn't been long since I came back here. I didn't expect to get together with my brothers and everyone else so soon. What a happy happenstance." Sky Sword Lung Quangxing laughed and said, "This time, I am going to drink to my heart's content." "Okay, Quangxing, let's not chit-chat while hanging out here." The old clan lord laughed. Lung Quangxing caught himself with an embarrassed smile. "Brothers, please come with me. The banquet is being prepared." Chapter 2011. Instruction. Chapter 2011. Instruction. Yi Futian and his party settled down at the Lung family's compound. After many nearby family members got wind of the news, visitors started trailing in. However, most of them were there, hoping to catch a glimpse of Zhong Chan, this upcoming figure in Donghua domain. Thus, Zhong Chan was quite preoccupied. People from Donghua heavens came specifically to visit him. Many of them were elders, which made it difficult to refuse their visits, especially when many of them were familial forces that had enjoyed good relationships with the Lung family over the years. Yi Futian and Li Changxing were together in a courtyard. As Li Changxing looked into the distance, he smiled and said, "Brother Zhong is very busy now." These people who came to visit were all heads of some of the most influential families. Brother Zhong will become one of the future pillars of Donghua domain. Aside from being valued by these principalities, it doesn't hurt to forge friendships with some of these families, Yi Futian said with a smile. This was simple enough to understand. If someone was acquainted with powerful figures such as the Millet Emperor or Emperor Shi, it was an excellent thing. And now, who wouldn't be happy to make some connections with Zhong Chan before becoming a powerful man of the region? That's true enough. Some of them even brought along their most accomplished young ladies of the clan, every one of them superior in both looks and talent. What kind of suggestion was that, and what does it look like to others? Kind of undignified. Li Changxing seemed to find the whole affair rather amusing as he continued with a smile, but some of them were true beauties. Brother Zhong does not have a path companion yet, perhaps there is an opportunity here. Yi Futian knew that Li Changxing was joking. With Zhong Chan's strength and status today, the path companion worthy of him must also be extremely extraordinary. However, it was also obvious that he had no such thoughts, or he wouldn't have waited until now unless he had met his perfect match. However, as they were already in the realm of Renhuang, this kind of peddling was indeed inappropriate. Though, it did indicate the importance that these great families placed on Zhong Chan. They did not hesitate to lower themselves for a chance to recruit him into their own family. If they succeeded, this upcoming star would become part of their family, and the benefits that were associated with this relationship were quite obvious to all. Of course, from Yi Futian's perspective, this idea was bound to fail. At this point, two people were walking this way. They were youngsters from the Lung family. Both of them looked to be no more than 20, with a fairly low level of cultivation. They were a boy and a girl, both good-looking, and they appeared to be well-mannered. Leng Yan, Leng Shi, greet the elders. The two came in front of Li Changxing and Yi Futian, bowing slightly. "I believe that even if the elder didn't cultivate in blade techniques, you would still be able to give me some pointers," replied Leng Yan. Yi Futian smiled. Leng Yan knew how to seize the opportunity. Next to them, Li Changxing was already instructing Leng Shi, so he said, "All right, what questions do you have?" "Among my peers in the family, my talent was SOSO, and my combat effectiveness is about mid-range as well. Some brothers of my generation cultivated the same blade techniques, but they are much better than me. Therefore, I would like you, sir, to see where the problems are in my techniques," Leng Yan said to Yi Futian. He didn't diagnose his own problem but asked Yi Futian to take a look at it instead. Yi Futian nodded. This Leng Yan was a smart guy. He said, "Let me see your blade techniques." Very well. Leng Yen nodded. As his figure flashed, he stepped into the void and suddenly was bursting with an incredibly strong rule power of swordsmanship. Invisible swords condensed and manifested as Leng Yen was gathering momentum. His palms faced up toward the sky as swords suddenly appeared in thin air. The aura from his body continued to rise, as well as getting stronger. The strong sword made a sharp sound in the void, and an extremely sharp aura enveloped the sky above. When his aura climbed to the highest point, Leng Yen stretched out both hands. Holding a sword, he slashed into the void. In an instant, many blade lights bloomed at the same time, turning into a brilliant blade aurora. They rushed straight into the firmament, intent on splitting the void. And it didn't dissipate until it was well into the distance. Futian looked up and watching quietly. This blade technique was very good, and the rule power it exhibited was strong as well, definitely on par with him when he himself was in the Sage realm back then. Fierce, domineering, and indomitable, completely embodied the essence of the blade technique. Leng Yen landed on the ground after unleashing the sword. As he returned in front of Futian, he said, "Sir." "Not bad." Futian nodded slightly in acknowledgement. The rule power was unleashed to its fullest. It was fierce and domineering, in line with the way of the blade. However, too much force was exerted as well as the effort on pursuing the form. Leng Yen was thoughtful. It was as if trying to understand the meaning behind Futian's words. Finally, he said, "Please expound, sir." "A few months ago, I went to the Divine Ocean continent and encountered the relic left by thunder-punishing Skylord there. I found that there were carvings of many axe techniques, and some of them were formed naturally and had not been carved with the power of the Great Path. However, their spirits were far stronger than those carved by the power of the Great Path. After many marks were made, thunder-punishing Skylord was able to break the constraints of the Great Path. Although I haven't reached that state, I did have some insights. Your blade techniques were more insistent on form rather than spirit. It isn't ideal," said Futian. But Leng Yen was still puzzled. There was a huge gap between his and Futian's realm, and same with perception. Some things far surpassed his ability of understanding. "Strike me with the sword," Futian said. "Very well." Leng Yen nodded, once again gathering the momentum of the sword. Futian's body was covered by a sword will, like a storm tearing through the void. In the next moment, Leng Yen unleashed the sword. The sword slashed directly at Futian without reservation because he knew that his sword did not pose any threat to Futian. When Futian saw the sword coming, he raised his finger and pointed at the sword. Even Leng Yen felt a little shocked at this moment. From Futian's finger, he didn't notice any aura of the Great Path. Clang! The sword broke. And as the finger fell, a light appeared on the ground where the sword had struck. An invisible sword will, without form, was able to split his sword in two. Leng Yan's arms hung by his sides as he stared in shock. How did this happen? He seemed stunned, just standing there, with continuous flickering in his eyes. Sometimes his brows were knitted, and sometimes they were unfurled. After a while, he simply closed his eyes, overcome by extreme tranquility. He momentarily forgot his surroundings. Futian didn't interrupt him. On the other side, Li Changxing and Leng Shi were looking at this side. Previously, he was instructing Leng Shi in cultivation. When he saw Leng Yen in a daze, Li Changxing looked interested. What was going on? Leng Shi didn't even know what had happened. He just stared at Leng Yen, puzzled. After a while, there were invisible fluctuations from Leng Yan's body, and some changes seemed to have taken place in his entire person. This change was invisible, and he seemed to be sharper than before. His eyes opened, and he looked at Futian. Slightly bowing, he said, "Thank you, Master." Suddenly, the confusions and questions he had about his own cultivations for such a long time cleared up at this moment. It was as if he had found a path to cultivation. He had hoped that Li Changxing would be the one to instruct him, but by chance, Futian took him on. He had gained more than he had expected, and he was grateful. "This is," Li Changxing revealed a smile. "Are you going to be his apprentice?" Futian shook his head and looked at Leng Yen. "I don't have any intention of accepting disciples." I understand, Lin Yan said. But receiving instruction from Elder today is a memorable event. I shall always remember it in all my days. Leng Shi was a little surprised. It seemed that Lin Yan had gained a lot. Yi Futian didn't say anything more. I'm only pointing some things out as I see them. How much you can realize on your own is completely dependent on your own talent. Go back to cultivate and comprehend thoroughly. Yes, sir. Lin Yan bowed and said, I will bid my farewell. He left immediately after that. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2012, The Premier Holy Land. Chapter 2012, The Premier Holy Land. After Leng Yan received instruction from Yi Futian, he went back to cultivate. After sitting in meditation for a day, when he emerged from cultivation the next day, his temperament had changed greatly. He had a breakthrough in his cultivation, and his blade techniques were more refined. He had clearly made considerable progress. Even Leng Shi was a little regretful that she didn't ask Yi Futian for help. She was there next to them yesterday, but she had concentrated on Li Changxing's instructions and ignored Yi Futian's instructions to Leng Yan. Although she later asked Leng Yan for details, she couldn't quite understand the ideas that Leng Yan tried to express for some reason. On this day, many members of the Leng family gathered, seemingly waiting for someone's arrival. Outside the family compound, in the void, a group of cultivators arrived by air. Everyone in the group had an extraordinary temperament and an elegant demeanor. Each one of them was a notable figure in their own right. Seeing their appearance, the genius talent who was the lead, Leng Quangxing, revealed a smile. As the group descended, he smiled and said, Welcome, everyone, to the Leng family. The elder is too kind. We come this time to trouble you with some business of ours. Please forgive us in advance. Everyone in the group bowed slightly to pay their respect. They were humble and polite. The visitors were all in Renhuang realm as far as their cultivation was concerned. The empress who stood in the middle of the group was eye-catching both in looks and temperament. She was like a goddess out of this world, and yet she had a sense of sharpness about her. We are friends here, no need for formality. I think you all know my brother. The woman pointed to Leng Quangxing and introduced him to everyone. She was a lady of the Leng family, the sister of Sky Sword, Leng Qinghan. They were my fellow cultivators, Leng Qinghan said to Leng Quangxing. Leng Quangxing knew that, of course, and turned around to gesture. Please, everyone. The group walked inside the family compound. The Leng family had already prepared a banquet like the one they had prepared last time when they hosted the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower, which was a grand feast. The chief of the Leng family was also in attendance. After the two parties greeted each other, they took their seats. Some young members of the family also arrived, including Leng Shi and Leng Yan. However, they could only sit in the back and watch those visitors. They knew exactly where these people came from. However, although everyone was seated, no one moved, and there were still a lot of empty seats left, which seemed to have been prepared for others. Go and ask them to come now. The Leng family chief commanded. Someone immediately bowed and left to follow the order. Li Changxing looked at Zhong Chan because those words were directed at him. Yi Futian sat there quietly without speaking, watching everything in silence. With Zhong Chan here, nothing had to do with him. I have also looked up to Donghua Academy for a long time, and if the opportunity allows, I must visit, Zhong Chan responded with a smile. After the chief's order, all cultivators are now on their way to Donghua Heavens. Donghua Academy will also be the center of this gathering of unprecedented talents. It is also an important place that you definitely need to visit now that you are here in Donghua Heavens. Zhong Chan nodded. He did want to go. At this time, Yi Futian heard a voice. What does Brother Yi think? Yi Futian glanced at Li Changxing and thought that Li Changxing was a curious character. He said, Is senior brother referring to these cultivators or the matter of going to Donghua Academy? Whichever one you think it is, Li Changxing responded with a smile. These cultivators don't understand, and there is nothing more to be said. As for Donghua Academy, I would like to see it, said Yi Futian. Junior brother, ye should go and experience it. Donghua Academy is extraordinary and has a considerable number of treasures. One of the treasures is a magic mirror that can attest to the rank of the divine wheel of the Great Path. You have several divine wheels. Don't you want to take a closer look? Li Chongxing said temptingly. Is it really as incredible as it sounds? Yi Futian showed a look of amazement. Li Chongxing nodded. In the divine prefecture, there are the distinction of perfection and imperfection in divine wheels, with no distinction in rank. However, in reality, even the most perfect divine wheels still have ranks. Every cultivator is different, and that mirror can assess the strength of the divine wheel. Countless cultivators have already gone to be examined. Now in Donghua Heavens, and even the entire Donghua domain, the strongest divine will ever tested belonged to the son of the current domain chief. He is also known as the strongest man of his generation. Donghua domain has placed high expectations on him. I was talking to Brother Zong about if we should go and visit when people from Donghua Academy have arrived by themselves. To this, Yi Futian nodded. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2013, Chance Encounter. Chapter 2013, Chance Encounter. At the banquet, the cultivators from Donghua Academy formally invited Zong Chan and the others for a visit. Li Chongxing and Zong Chan both agreed to go. In Yi Futian's estimation, they probably didn't just invite the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower. This time, all forces were about to gather in Donghua Heavens. As the premier holy land of the Donghua domain, Donghua Academy would want to meet the top personalities from every corner. After the banquet, all the cultivators from Donghua Academy and the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower left, except for Leng Qinghan. She was going to accompany the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower to visit Donghua Academy. After all, this was her familial home, and those from Wangshan Watchtower were their guests. Qinghan, this time, Donghua Academy did not just invite the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower, did they? Chief Ling asked. Leng Qinghan nodded and said, when they learned that the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower were here, they decided to come with me for a visit, and that was the consensus of many cultivators at the academy. They wanted to invite cultivator from all sides to the academy, so they made the proposal. The head of the Leng family nodded. This time, it is really a meeting of the minds. Donghua Academy is the premier holy land, and everyone will accept the invitation. I think they are very interested in Zong Chan, and Zong Chan must be very interested in him. Leng Qinghan thought about that person for a moment. Although Zong Chan was extremely talented and had cast the perfect divine wheel of Upper Renhuang, there was still quite a big gap between the two. She did not think that there was anyone who could compare with the person they are referring to. In the Donghua domain, he was the one and only, and this was the consensus of all the cultivators in Donghua Heavens. It was the same even for the chief disciple of the Sword Goddess from the fluttering Snow Palace. The cultivators of Donghua Academy knew how much glory he had brought them. In their view, of the four top figures in Donghua domain, he was at one level while the other three were at another. In addition to Zong Chan, Li Chongxin of Wangshan Watchtower is also very powerful. Since we are talking about talent, have you noticed that white-haired young man? Chief Ling asked. Naturally. Leng Qinghan nodded. The news of him defeating Ling He has already spread to Donghua Academy. Ling He was a member of Lingxiao Palace and also cultivated at Donghua Academy. He was considered a disciple of the academy. Lingxiao Palace was considered a familial principality, while Donghua Academy was considered a holy place for preaching. There was no conflict of interest, even the son of the chief went there for cultivation. Chief Ling nodded. He is also very powerful. In Donghua Academy, his battle record is difficult for anyone to match. Leng Qinghan, who disagreed with this statement, retorted, Ling He is outstanding. If he can defeat Ling He must be a top-notch character, but there are still a few people who are superior to Ling He in the academy. He isn't as powerful as all that. It was extremely high praise for Clan Lord Lung to say that no one could compare to Yi Futian. It suggested that besides that man, almost no one could match Yi Futian's talent. She, who was cultivating at Donghua Academy, thought this was an exaggeration of sorts. After this time, we should be able to see, Chief Lung said with a smile. Emperor Yi is indeed extremely powerful, a voice said. Lung Qinghan looked at the speaker. When she saw who it was, she smiled and said, Lung Yen, your cultivation has improved? Auntie, Lung Yen nodded. Under the guidance of Emperor Yi, I had an epiphany and made some progress in cultivation. No wonder. Lung Qinghan smiled. Of course, I believed in the strength of Emperor Yi too. After all, Ling He is also a powerful man in the Donghua heavens. Leng Yen didn't argue with her. He could see that even though his aunt recognized Yi Futian's strength, she didn't think he could be raised to another level, such as at the same level as Zhong Chan. Of course, this was not surprising. After all, Zhong Chan was now Upper Renhuang with perfect Great Path, on his way to becoming a pillar in the domain. This fact was evident from the attitude exhibited by the cultivators who had visited these days, including the cultivators of Donghua Academy. Today, the four great individuals were well known to everyone in the entire Donghua domain. Not only their talent but their strength had also reached the topmost level. They were now able to fight against the existence of Renhuang Ninth Realm. A few days later, at the time they agreed upon, the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower and Donghua Academy arrived. They came in the cold early morning hours at the place where Li Changsheng and the others had been cultivating. Miss Lung. Li Changsheng and Zhong Chan walked out together, with Yi Futian and his party following behind. Lung Qinghan nodded slightly at them and said, "Are we ready to go?" "Yes, please." Li Changsheng nodded. "I will lead the way for everyone." With a flash of her figure, Lung Qinghan stepped into the void in one step. Li Changsheng and others followed behind her. Sky Sword Lung Quangsheng was also accompanying them because he was considered a member of Wangshan Watchtower. There were cultivators in the sky above Donghua heavens, and many of them were very powerful Renhuang. Countless cultivators had descended on this continent these days to usher in the most prosperous period the region had seen in 50 years. "Miss Lung, what level of cultivation is the vice chief now?" Li Changsheng walked to Lung Qinghan and asked. Chapter 2014, Estrangement. Chapter 2014. Estrangement. Donghua Academy was the best educational institution in the Donghua domain. No other academies could compare. Likewise, those that cultivated there were the most excellent cultivators, not some beginners or intermediate cultivators. Unless some unusually enchanting characters were chosen by the academy's great figures to be taught by their sides and personally overseeing their cultivation, the minimum level for potential disciples in Donghua Academy was the Saint Realm. Those in the Saint Realm had already transcended the ordinary and moved into sainthood, proving that they could shed their roots from the world, thus allowing them to pass through the threshold of Donghua Academy. This premier academy in Donghua was not here to cultivate its future generations but to cultivate top-notch individuals who would be qualified to rule Donghua heavens in the future. Those who came out of Donghua Academy were generally already at the top of Donghua domain, whose cultivations were extraordinary. Yi Futian and the others stepped into Donghua Academy. This academy was different from all the other academies that Yi Futian had been to before. In other academies, their many disciples could be seen walking around everywhere on campus. But Donghua Academy was different. They didn't see many disciples milling around. For disciples in this realm, they spent most of their time cultivating rather than wandering leisurely around the academy. Furthermore, this academy was like a city, boundless and massive. Inside the academy and looking into the distance, many magnificent ancient temples were built on top of an ancient peak. Immortal spirits abound with waterfalls and flowy clouds. One could even catch a glimpse of some sacred beasts. Looking up, there were islands floating with buildings on them. They were the palaces in which powerful men cultivated. Among the clouds and mist, it truly resembled an earthly wonderland. Yi Futian was a little emotional. This was the top academy in Divine Prefecture. It was like a place for the divines to cultivate. The power of the Great Path lifted up those floating islands, and the aura of the Great Path was everywhere, permeating throughout the vast and endless Donghua Academy. In the distance, there was a range of vast and endless divine mountains, full of mystery. Yi Futian knew that there were many secret cultivation locations inside that ordinary people would never reach. Donghua Academy had the best cultivation resources within the Donghua domain. The general background of the establishment of this academy originated from Donghuang the Great's desire to preach. It could be said that the supporting force behind it was the great emperor, with the full support of the domain chief's manor. In just a few hundred years, the first academy in Donghua domain had been established. Yi Futian was not the only one who had come here for the first time.